welcome back to the studio today. I know that given any particular video that you happen to watch could be a different season here in the studio. Today I'm in Halloween mode. I have our kit that was originally a block of the month, but now it can be purchased as a full kit or as individual blocks behind me. And I also have a new quilt top on top of my presentation table or my ironing board. This particular top was a kit that I saw at one of my local quilt stores. When I went in, I had to pick up some parts for the Bernina. I was trying to get an extra tray basket for the side, and I saw this kit and I thought, I really need something kind of simple right now. Some of you may know that when my father passed away in March, that my mother moved in with me, and I've been helping take care of her. She has some mobility issues, but that has kind of changed the way that both of us live. It's changed our time, available time, and how we spend our time. So I'm learning to adjust with that, but I had gotten to the point where I just needed to spend some time in the studio and do something fairly quick. So I thought this Halloween kit was cute. It was all pre-made by the shop, a collection of different fabrics, but also the pattern that was used to assemble it is a free Benartex pattern. And the original pattern was called Amber Dreams, and it had nothing to do with Halloween, but it was lent itself very nicely to fabrics that have border stripes in it. This particular one had this Halloween border stripe with the crows in alternating rows with the graveyard, and I believe at the bottom, yes, there's a little village of haunted houses. So I thought this was cute. One thing I didn't take into account when I was making mine is that I just went ahead and cut the border stripe where the particular stripes were on the fabric. I didn't pay attention to how tall they should be. So I had to make a little minor adjustment to my quilt so that it assembled close to what the original pattern was. But I've been making these kinds of mistakes for 30 years. So in the end, I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. I think I got it together in a day and a half. So that was a pretty good thing. It gave me a sense of accomplishment. This gray plaid on the side here, this is what I'm using as my backing fabric. And after I got the backing and the piece cut aside for the sleeve, I decided that I also wanted some for the binding. So I went back and got another piece. And oftentimes what I'll do is make way more binding than I need, hoping that I'll have enough for another project later. So I have a whole yard of this fabric, and I'm going to cut the whole yard up and make binding with it. So I had some Halloween patterns on the IQ already. I have done, this one was Spindle by Melanie Caldwell, and it's more of an open spider web. There is a video that will be coming up that has another spider web on it that was much denser and took a lot longer to sew. And spiderweb would have been my natural choice for this also, but I just didn't want to show 3 spiderweb videos fairly consecutively because Halloween is kind of a short season. So I've been thinking about Melonie Caldwell lately, and so I wanted to do another one of her designs. So I filtered on the website today the designs by Melanie, which is very easy to do on the website or on a tablet or your phone. On the tablet or phone, it's often shot by, and then you can get your filter. On the website, it's just on the left-hand side, you could say filter by designer. Those options are available on both phone, tablet, or computer. And I found one that I like. It's a ghost that's going to be blowing sideways. So all I have left to do is get the new design on the tablet and get my quilt loaded So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I hope that you'll stick around and watch me do some Boo on this Halloween quilt. Let's see if I can get it loaded all in one shot. Look at how good I shot that over here. Loaded it right onto the frame all by itself. That was a time saver. While we were in the blink of an eye, I also went and downloaded my new purchase, Boo by Melanie Caldwell. It's a really cute Halloween pattern. It's a ghost that's going to be weaving up and down. Approximately, well, it was exactly 9.75 is how tall the design's supposed to be. I may decrease that a little bit just to get a little closer to the scale of the fabric, but I'm not going to go too small. And so I've got that loaded on the IQ. I've got my IQ back to its start position. So I'm going to come around and get started loading this design onto the IQ tablet for this quilt specifically. One of my new things is that I like to print off these PDFs that come with the digital designs. It has all the information. The designer, Melanie Caldwell, Melanie digitized it. It also has the default print size, 9.75, so that tells you how tall the design is and how tall it should be on the IQ as a reference point. This is a real lifesaver for most people because we did not design these, so we don't really have any idea how tall they should be. When they come into the IQ program, they really could be at any size. So I'm going to hit Design Sew, Start New. We have a work in progress. That was whatever I was working on last time. Do I want to replace it? Yes. Do I want to erase it permanently? Yes. And do I want to restart the clock? Yes. Ultimately, I personally don't care how long something takes. That's just me. I'm going to be importing a pantograph, and I'm going to enter the rectangle manually. I have to do that because I don't know how much is rolled on the quilt. There's no way for me to advance the head of the machine far enough to get all of that on there. So I have to have the size of the quilt. And I have it written down. I'm going to enter my rectangle manually. I'm going to do it 63 by 80. Let's see, 86. And that didn't work. 63 wide by 86 long. 63, 86, double check my stuff and hit continue. Hit finished. You saw the representation of the quilt on there. My design is still in the download file, so I'm just going to go over to B and I'll arrow forward one time, and there's my design. It says Boo, B-O-O, and then there's dash 9.75. I always eliminate the inventory control number when I'm putting the design on my USB stick. I rename it. So I eliminated the inventory control number and I added the height of the design. So when I get to this point, I know what size it's supposed to be. So I'm going to select that twice for the even and odd rows. And you can see my ghost flying across the quilt, but there's a pretty big gap in there. So the first thing I want to do to make it look more like this is to reduce the gap. So I'll select that, and I could either hit the up and down arrow, or I could simply run my finger across the screen until this is interlocking in a way that I like. So the gap is good now. What I need to work on next is the height. Right now my pattern height is 20 inches, but I want my pattern height to be 9.75. So I'm going to select the combination button of row height, pattern height, but row height is what is selected. It says it's 12 inches. if I wanted to change that with the keyboard, it would only change the row height to exact number. The pattern height would be some algorithm. So I'm just going to, well, I could go ahead and use the keyboard first and hit 9.75 and get partway there. That still has my pattern height at 16.5 inches, which is too big. So I'm just going to keep hitting the down button, but I'm focusing on pattern height. I want to get my pattern height down to less than 10 inches. Okay, my row height now is 5.847, 5 inches and a little more than 3/4. But my pattern height now is 9.745. So it's just slightly under the 9 3/4 inch that I want it to be. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to go for. Also, you'll notice when I was able to throw the quilt over here and it magically got attached to the frame, that I have this in a vertical position the way the quilt will be viewed, and these ghosts go sideways the way that they should be viewed also. I could have reduced the amount of rows by putting the quilt horizontally, but I wouldn't have been able to get my pattern to do that. So I can see by counting my ghosts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have about 15 rows to quilt, but I should be able to do a couple rows at a time. I have about 19 inches, so I might be able to do 1 or 2 depending on each roll up, we'll see. But I'm going to go ahead and hit finished. It is calculating. Transition type is going to be continuous. That just means when it sews off of the quilt, it chops the rest of the design off past the inches that we put on and just sews a straight line to the next entry point and comes back on. Since I've basted the edge of each side, that's what I want. I want it to just keep sewing. If I had it to do jump stitches or stop and cut threads, I would be stopping many times on each side. So I don't want that. So I'm going to hit accept to the continuous, and now I'm ready to sew my quilt. I have a light blue thread on there, which I thought would be cute with the ghosts. I think of ghosts as powdery blue. And I also thought the light color would show up on most of these darks. But before I start, I'm just going to look in my thread drawer to see if there's a variegated blue that might be prettier. And I'm going to slow down my manual just a little bit. I have isocord thread in both the top and bottom, and I have a spool of metallic thread, but I don't know if I'm going to use that yet. So let me look in the drawer and then we'll get to push and start. I have my design loaded the way that it will sew out. I've got about, what did I say, 10 or 15 rows. I'm ready to go ahead and select the first row. I've checked the quilt and made sure that we're under tension, that I've got my sides and top basted. I have anything off of the quilt that could cause an obstruction or a needle to break. And I'm ready to sew. So I'm going to go ahead and hit sew quilt and select the first pattern. It's going to be a partial pattern at the top. I'm going to hit continue, sew quilt. It's reminding me to have my machine on manual, which I have. And somehow I hit preview. Sometimes you get so preoccupied with setup that you forget one little step. And I had forgotten to power up the motors for the IntelliQuilter, so everything I was doing was in demo mode. I've just redone that so that it will actually sew out. Otherwise, it would have just sewn out in preview mode only. And I actually do want to sew. So I've made sure there's nothing on the quilt. I've taken the papers off, my phone off, my scissors off. The edges are all basted, so I'm actually ready to get down to business. I'm going to hit Sew Quilt because I have the pattern as I want it. I'm going to do the very top row and hit Continue, Sew Quilt. It is off to its first start quilt of row 1. I do have my machine on manual. So very little of this will actually get on top of the quilt. It's a very small partial row, but I'm going to go ahead and let it sew out anyway. And then we'll get to doing row number 2 and moving further on down the quilt. Once we get to row 2, we should see what the design looks like in actual size. In the meantime, I'm going to drink tea and eat cookies. So we've sewn out the first complete row. I'm ready to sew another row, so I'm going to pull both my needle up and my presser foot up. I'm going to select Sew Quilt, select the next row to do, and there's 2 shades of green for the quilting, and so you can see it up close which row that I'm going to start. I'm going to hit Continue, Continuous Sewing, Sew Quilt, and I don't know why it does this, but whenever I switch the thread, I guess because I didn't use panto sequencing for the whole quilt, but it's going to go to the other row, so I just stop it and I'm going to hit Restart. I'm going to move it back to the start. Oh, that's still end. Well, I'm going to move to the other side because that's the way it has it on this row. This is the end on the right. I wanted to save my time and not cut the thread, but I'm going to go ahead and move to the other side just to simplify matters. And then I'm going to go ahead and push start and get started. Do you ever just make yourself crazy with little silly things? I hit Restart and I was going back to the row that I'd already done. So the start to is on the right hand side. I just had to move down far enough to get to it. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull up my bobbin thread. and hit start. I selected the next row to quilt, which is row number 3, and then when I trace the quilt, or try and trace the pattern, I can't get to the bottom of the design. That's because I'm hitting the rollers, so that lets me know that I do have to roll the quilt up or advance and then realign the quilt pattern. So what I'm going to do is just select what would be the highest point in the next row that I want to sew, which is the hat on the ghost here. And I'm just going to drop my needle down. I could do this anywhere on the quilt. I've removed my tension from the side, so now I'm going to go ahead and roll my quilt up. I'm going to bring up the top and slowly roll the quilt back until I get back as far as the head of the machine will go. And I'm going to tighten the top, the take-up lever, and I know that when I readjust the belly bar here, that it will pull the head a little bit closer towards me again, giving me a little bit of allowance at the top. So now I can go ahead and drop the top back down, the top bar, and fluff it out as needed. I'll go ahead and baste the sides of the quilt again and get everything back under tension, and then we'll readjust. What I need to do now is realign, because I've advanced the quilt, I've basted my two sides, I've reapplied the tension in all four directions. So this bottom pattern is the one that I need to sew next. So I'm going to go back to some point on the previously sewn area that has a sharp point or intersection that will be easy to select. And so I'm going to choose the tip of a star. And so I'm going to choose that. Boy, this zoom always confuses me. Realign. Touch the point of the star. Move the head of the machine to that point and hit continue and OK. And now I'm going to restart at my next row. I'm at the start of row 3. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to pull up the bobbin thread and hit start. I've hit the restart button. I've gone back to the beginning of row 3, and now it's going to stitch out the little ghost floating across from left to right. We'll see here in just a second how good my interlocking is, my realignment. Looks just about perfect. I'll move you in closer so you can see how the interlock is doing. You can see here is the gap in between my rows, and so we have a nice little gap. And things are sewing pretty nicely. I've reached the halfway point on the quilt, which is approximately here, and it's going pretty smoothly. Sometimes I just get absent-minded or I am distracted by other things, but once you have the program, the quilt loaded on the program, it really is just a matter of selecting the next row. I'm able to do one pass left to right and one pass right to left in between each roll up. When I roll up, then I realign. I usually realign using the point of a star because it's very distinct, rather than a curve, which could be a little bit more of an interpretation of where you think it is. So I usually use points like that. I enjoy doing this today because I have spent so much time with Melanie, the designer of this. We used to always spend time together at the shows, like in Houston or at some other quilt festival, and this is so much like her. It's very whimsical, and I'm enjoying watching it stitch out, and in a way it makes me feel like I'm getting to spend a little time with her, which is kind of an added benefit for me because I know several of the designers. But I'm going to keep forging on. It's time for me to roll up again. So I will roll up, re-add the tension to the sides, re-baste, and realign again. As I said, I'm about halfway done at this point. So I'm going to continue on and see if we can get this wrapped up today. Besides, I've got Christmas stuff I want to do. Yay! We're at the last row. I have all the other rows complete. I have adjusted the bottom of the quilt to make sure that I wasn't wasting a lot of thread, and so these rows are sewing out pretty fast, only about 5 or 6 minutes per row. So I'm anticipating within the next 5 minutes that this quilt will be finished, and then I can go ahead and get it trimmed up and bring it back downstairs so you can see what the finish is like. It's doing really well as far as tension on the back of the quilt and the front. Since I've slowed the speed of the machine down a little bit, it has been sewing a lot better without any thread breaks. But just as soon as I spoke, you heard the machine go off, and we have some kind of problem which I can't see from here. So I'm going to come around and address the situation and see what we have left to do, and then I will let you watch the rest of the quilt sew out. Well, I got it trimmed up. This is the back, which I like, very sedate. It's not flannel, but it is a nice plaid. It isn't exactly lined up perfectly with the quilt, so it may look a little lopsided, but I don't think it's too bad. And the quilting is really nice on the back. And I'll see if I can bring you a little bit closer so you can see some of the quilting on the front. But all in all, for just a couple days of work, this went really quick. It was fun to spend time in theory with Mel, the designer of this quilting pattern called Boo. And it is a ghost that is wavering across the quilt. I will get a sleeve on this. Probably won't be hanging in here necessarily, but I might hang it on my front porch for Halloween. And it was nice to do something simple when you're stressed out. Just give yourself a sense of accomplishment. Now, I am sure I'm not the only person in the world that is helping take care of somebody. I know mothers and fathers do it all the time, taking care of rambunctious kids. But my heart goes out to everyone that has that responsibility. And I know at times it can be stressful. God, I know that it can be stressful at times. But we just have to be thankful for the times we have together. And on that line, I'm very thankful for the time that we get to spend together. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you spend some of it with me. I would like to know how many of you enjoy making seasonal quilts, and what is your favorite season to make things for? I always hear on the news that Halloween is one of the biggest decorating holidays, and I always think that's funny. I would always think Thanksgiving or Christmas would be bigger because the season seems to last so much longer. But I'd be curious to know what your favorite season is, and if you decorate for more than one season. Mostly inside the house I decorate for Christmas. That's about it. I don't decorate for fall, and I don't do anything for spring or Easter or anything like that. But I'm getting to the point where I almost feel like I don't want to decorate for Christmas either. But I know that's just stress. A little bit of that is stress. So let me know what your favorite season is, and if you have a favorite seasonal quilt that you have made, I would like to have you post a picture of it and share that with everybody on the feed. Just post it in the comments section, and we'll all get a chance to enjoy that with you. If you want, you can tell a little story about how it came about and why it's your favorite. And so thanks for stopping by the studio. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.